back to like the B word. I know some people get really scared about putting together a budget, but
The
budgets
other big, the
really
big, yeah, the big M and the big
the
B. Yeah.
big M and B, they're really scary topics, but budgeting doesn't really have to be scary. Like it's if you think about just like having a calendar, we budget out our time when we look at calendars and things like that. We don't want to overextend ourselves and run out of time where we can't get everything done in a day or go to all the things and events that we had plan to do. And so it's super wise to budget out and think through our finances in a very practical way through having a budget to say, like, okay, this is how much I have coming in. This is how much I can afford.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot be more honored, more pleased to bring in somebody who really understands what the big M is. No, I'm not talking about Madonna. No, I'm not talking about any of these other big M's. And I don't know why I use Madonna, who's a 40-year, 40-year-old reference. I'm talking about money. But our friend here, Katie Jones, is going to help break that down and make this big M less scary for us. So, Katie, welcome to the God and Gig Show. How are you doing?
Alan, thank you so much for having me. I am doing great, and I am just really excited to be here to talk about the big M word, money.
Well, I did that first because I feel like we've been in both church circles for a long time, both of us. We know that this subject usually goes one of two ways. Either, the extreme of it's horrible, you should not want it, or you should have all of it in the world. And, if you don't,
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't love you, So these huge extremes. And then, as I just said right before we jumped on, there's this middle ground that you seem to represent, which is just wisdom, just
Mm.
knowing how to handle this. But we will get into all of that. But I always want to make sure that people who are meeting you for the first time have the opportunity to do so without getting, having to go down the entire bio, which I probably just read, and it probably goes a mile long, right? Because you're so accomplished in what you do. So for people who are meeting you for the first time, can you just give them a couple of things that you'd want them to know if they don't read everything, just a few things that you want people to know upon first meeting?
Sure. Well, yes, I am Katie Jones. I think the most important fact to share is that I am a follower of Jesus. And I do say that specifically, like I'm not a Christian, I am a follower of Jesus, because I think there is a difference. There can be a difference. There doesn't have to be, but I think, unfortunately, being a follower of Jesus isn't always something that people think about. So I'm a disciple, following him. And that's what I really try to do with how I teach and guide others with their finances, is to be a follower of Jesus in that. And so we're not trying to get lots of money or try to give it all away, but yeah, where's that wisdom in the middle that kind of has that balance of a little bit of both? And so that's what at the core of who I am. But I'm a certified Christian financial counselor, which is just a fancy way to say that I'm passionate about equipping believers with excellent money management skills that are rooted in the gospel. And so those are some of the big things, but some fun facts, I guess, about me. My husband is a youth pastor, so I am a pastor's wife. I have been since we've been married. He's been a youth pastor for about 7 or 8 years, and we've been married almost 7 now. And we have a little baby boy. We're also foster parents. We currently live in Denver, Colorado. And yeah, those are some fun facts about me.
Love it. Love it. Well, I love how, even as you talked about your experience and your passion for helping people with their finances, immediately went into the family, because the
Mhm.
purpose behind all of this, and you are talking, of course, we're talking to people who are all over the map when it comes to creative space and entrepreneurial space. They may be teachers, they may be dancers, they may be musicians, they may be stay-at-home moms who just have a desire to do a side
Mhm.
hustle that could bring in finances later. So, as you know, as a certified financial planner, these you can't address every single situation possible, right? But I do wonder, when you first think about how you became, and I love this story, so I'm pretty sure they probably already read it, but just in case they didn't catch it, Can you tell me just a little bit about that story that you mentioned in your open about um, becoming debt free
Mhm.
super early for most people? Like most people see this as something that happens forever. You know, they're paying off a mortgage for 40, 50 years. So I want you just to share a little bit about how you figured out this at an early stage of your life, because I think it's going to help us
Yeah.
figure out what is more important after that, right? But yes, can you explain a little bit about how that happened so early?
Yeah, great question. So as I was graduating college, I was working at a property management firm at the time, working as a leasing agent to help landlords rent out their properties. And I was seeing what they were doing and I wanted to kind of do the same. So my husband and I met in college. We graduated and a couple years later got married. A few months after we got married, it was only 3 months after that, we bought our first rental property. We bought another rental property then a year after that. And we then set our sights on becoming debt free as quickly as we could. I had kind of started getting into this like personal finance space in general and was like reading and consuming everything that I could to educate myself on personal finances and just how to do this. And so we became really intensely focused on um, some side hustles as well as just saving as much as we could. And yeah, we put together this plan to pay off all of the student loans that we had. So actually, my husband didn't have any student loans. That was a huge blessing, but I had about
Mm.
$40,000 in student loan debt myself. And so I had a few different student loans and we focused on paying off the ones with the higher interest first. And then once we paid those off, then kind of rolled into the next one. This is considered like the avalanche method for anyone who's like curious about like the specifics on paying off debt, but that's what we did. And we were really intensely focused on kind of cutting our costs where we could and just paying it off as quickly as possible. So yeah, in 2020, it was only 4 years after graduating from college, we paid off all of those student loans. Now we still had and we still currently have one of the rental properties and have a loan on that, but we don't consider it like a personal debt because it's within our LLC and we're not paying it. It's our our tenants who are paying that mortgage off for us. So we don't classify that as like our debt. It's our business's debt. So at this point, yeah, we are debt free from those things and have worked really diligently to also stay away from any more debt that could be really harmful.
I love the fact that you guys really made this a point of your marriage at the beginning. And what I'm really wondering is when that happens, when you do set that focus, is there something spiritual? Like I imagine I've seen the Dave Ramsey tapes 1,000 times, right? The
Mhm.
I'm debt free. Is there this some kind of, I don't know, nirvana that comes? Because I'm telling you, for many creatives and entrepreneurs, it's like a dream that they can't imagine. They think that
Yeah.
that's the goal. They think that to get to the point where they have this freedom is like what God actually has for them. So did you experience that, or was there something a little different
Yeah.
that happens whenever you reach the pinnacle?
Interestingly enough, I would say yes, sure. We did experience this kind of like freedom nirvana moment. However, it really only lasted like maybe a day at that. Maybe
Wow.
into the week. We were
Not even
kind of
not
like,
even 48
yeah, I
hours.
know. It was kind of like a wow, we did it. This is amazing. We celebrated actually by going and getting an ice cream cake. It was wonderful. And then it was kind of one of those moments where we're like, well, we've reached this. Like now what? It did give us some freedom, right? Debt is a generosity killer. There's no doubt about that. But it felt like we had gotten to this place and we felt like it should have been like this greater sensation that we should have been experiencing. But it was just kind of like any other day. Yeah, we celebrated. It was wonderful. But then we kind of woke up the next morning being like, well now what? Like we're young, we've reached this point, and at the same time kind of asking ourselves like, well, where's God in this? Like we Is he still here with us? And it's kind of like that feeling of like you're running after something so intensely and you're running really fast. You get to the finish line and you had to kind of look behind you to be like, wait, where did the people I was doing this go? Like we realized that we had kind of left God in the dust when we were pursuing this goal. And I don't think we had really realized that even until much later, but it was just that feeling of like there has to be more. There has to be more than just this accomplishment. And we were kind of left wondering like, well now what?
Okay, so this you literally set this up perfectly for me because again, I'm thinking of I'll put myself on the chopping block here. As a musician, a lot of my friends, me personally, I'll be honest, probably me too. I want to say it's all them, but we search for the stage, the trophy, the Grammy, the adulation, the applause, the moment that you get your name on the list of whatever the highest paid, highest whatever
Mm-hmm.
grossing artists. We
Yeah.
have these goals out in front of us in a very, very similar way. Maybe it's not paying off debt. Maybe it's not being a millionaire or having rental properties, but it's something that
Mm-hmm.
we have put as the pinnacle of this proves that this is what God is looking for me to accomplish. And for you to say that you only had 48 maybe hours of that feeling of euphoria and then the now what, I think speaks volumes. So can you speak to a lot of your fellow entrepreneurs, maybe they are in real estate, or maybe they're like my people and they're in, creative spaces. There might be even ministry, right? Because we want our ministries to blow up and we want them
Mm-hmm.
to be successful. So can you speak to them a little bit about that, about when the goal becomes something that doesn't lead you to God, and like how can they navigate that? And I hate to say better than you did, but how can they learn the
Yeah.
lessons that you learned in terms of striving for things that don't necessarily bring the fulfillment simply because it's a big goal for them?
Yeah. I hope that people do it better than I do. And that's kind of why I do what I do now is because I've learned this path, like I've learned this lesson the hard way, right? And I don't want people to have to go through this experience of kind of being like, "Oh my gosh, I've forgotten about God at this point." Most of us know that the biblical truth about debt and have experienced it ourselves that when we have debt, we are a slave to the lender. And so, when a client comes to me and says, I have debt, of course we're going to work together to put off a debt payoff plan because eliminating all of your debt does free up your dollars to be deployed in a more intentional, kingdom impacting way. However, just like any financial goal or any goal that we have in general, debt freedom can be an idol for us. That goal can become an idol to us that we put these blinders to anything else around us and just focus so intensely on that one thing. And that is something that I did personally experience. I took this kind of like Colossians 3:23 approach. And the verse says like work at it with all of your heart as if working for the Lord and not man. And the way that I used that verse like was more of like okay God, you've given me this goal and now I'm just going to sprint. Like I'm going to just charge forward at full speed. And the problem with that was that I had such intensity with this goal that I tuned out everything, including God Himself. And so, yes, setting goals for ourselves, whether it's for our business or for our finances or even with our families or ministries, goals are really, really important because they do help us with giving direction. We need to know where we're going. We don't want to just like be blindly throwing darts at the wall and hope something sticks. We want to be intentional about the steps that we're taking with any of our endeavors. But we need to pursue our goals alongside of God. It needs to be a relationship so that we allow Him, a seat at the table to speak to us in real time so we can hear from Him when He might be calling us to change course. He might give us a specific goal of paying off our debt or, making a specific album of music or painting a specific art piece or doing something with our families. He might give us these goals, but that doesn't mean that He is going to stick with them long term. He might change them on us. He might redirect us. And that might leave us feeling really discombobulated, saying like, well, I thought you wanted me to accomplish this or do that, God. But so we can't be super intensely focused on just this goal until we reach it. Yes, there's a time and a place to be really intense, but we have to hold our goals with open hands in order to allow God to make those adjustments in our hearts. And especially because these goals that come from him can easily become an idol for ours. And so, I mean, ministry is a really great example. If my husband were to be like, we need to have like this many students in our youth ministry, we need to have this many salvations at the end of the year. And if we, these are great goals to kind of start to gauge where we're going and to see what success might look like, but we need to hold them loosely because God is the one who ultimately provides success and fulfillment for us, and not the accomplishment of these goals. Yes, we might feel it for a moment, but ultimately he's the one that kind of provides that lasting fulfillment and even like purpose and identity that we often put in our goals.
That's so well put. And immediately in my mind, forgive me because my spiritual ADD goes off.
Mm.
Immediately, I'm thinking of Solomon and the
Yeah,
everything is vanity, and someone that had it all, had literally said the
great
richest
point.
man right at the time, and yet wrote this entire book about how basically he had it was empty to him. He had
Yeah,
chased all these dreams and these goals and filled himself with all the pleasures of the world and just realized it was chasing after the wind. And so
exactly.
I love that you said that and made it so clear that even those goals that are godly may not be God, right? And so I
Exactly.
wonder, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say I think that's what's so hard is that something like, pursuing debt freedom or even just our families, providing well for our families. These things are really good and we find evidence and wisdom about them in the Bible. Like, of course, debt is like encapsulating. We are slave to the lender when we have debt, and we're told that if we don't provide for our families, we're considered
Worse.
wicked. It's so,
Mm-hmm.
of course we need to do these things, but when we set our sights only on these things and forget about everything else, then it actually becomes more sinful in a way to pursue those because we're holding them too tightly.
I love this. Yes, this is exactly what I think many of us again need to hear in any walk of life. But I do want to come back to you in another way regarding this, because you talked a lot about fulfillment. You talked
Mm-hmm.
about a lot about how finances we try to get them to fulfill us.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, you're fulfilled by other things. So I'm curious in your life, since debt freedom is not no longer the idol, since wealth is not the only goal you're looking at, what are the other things that do fulfill you that set up your identity outside of finances, outside of just the business world? Because I think if we hear it from you, who has all the tools of how to manage your monies, but we hear that you are more than just a finance person,
Mm.
we can see that, oh, maybe I also can achieve my financial goals, but not lose myself in terms of just chasing after a dream that doesn't really fulfill me. So, what are those things that help you stay focused and define on the right things to fulfill you?
Yeah. I think continuing to ask God what my purpose is right here. Having a budget is actually one of the most unique ministry tools that we have at our disposal. We can look at our finances and intentionally deploy every dollar that we have to, our family and all the other responsibilities that we have, but also for, kingdom impacting causes. We want to figure out what our purpose is for the resources that God has given us. We're created for something much greater than our own comforts and fulfillments and things like that. So we need to find this balance between kind of like a financial success side, but also like spiritual success, like what that might look like. And I use that word success kind of lightly because it's like there's no like right or wrong when it comes to what we're supposed to do spiritually. I mean, there's certain disciplines and things that we need to be pursuing, but finding contentment in this journey is so important because we're not going to find that joy that we're looking for in the material possessions that we are trying to accumulate or any of the financial goals that we're trying to accomplish. And so we need to recognize that that true fulfillment really does come from a deeper connection to God and being in relationship with Him. And that really is the goal. And so as a steward, when we're looking at all of the resources he has given us, what really kind of propels me forward is intentionally looking at my plan and being like, where am I kind of participating alongside of God, and where am I just working on building up my own kingdom versus His? So yeah, we do need to be really intentional about it and finding the purpose behind every dollar that we spend.
I really love that. As fact that you said that it's connected to the purpose, right? Every dollar that we spend is connected to our purpose. It's not
Yeah.
the purpose just to have the dollars. I am curious though, because I'm putting myself in the seat of the student here
Mm-hmm.
at a master. If I was to come in as the person that's like, okay, Katie, I hear you, pay off the debt. I got this, this really cool business idea over here that I want to spend $100,000 on and get the coolest equipment for. Just let me get the credit card. I promise I'll pay it off. What are the things that you would warn somebody like me coming to you saying, they are chasing a dream, they are chasing a goal, they are trying to be a good steward, but it's just that there's so much noise around this topic. Some
Mm-hmm.
people say get this, some people say don't get it. So what are the things that you'd want somebody to know, like those kind of like two or three things that a new client say,
Yeah.
like me again, like the
Yeah.
person that's like a chief of sinners? What are those first few things that you're like, you wish they would just take those couple of warning things before they really embark on a financial plan?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, first off, like in regards to debt, and especially when like starting a business or something really meaningful that God has given you to pursue, debt isn't really. It doesn't have to be the big bad scary. It doesn't have to be something that we're always fearful of. Again, yes, we want to be careful when taking on any debt. But there are moments when debt can be helpful, right? I mean, when starting a business, if you have nothing, but you have this idea, taking on a little bit of debt doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. And so I want to also like say that like I'm not super totally against every form of debt. I think it can be very helpful, but when we take on any kind of debt, we need to be intentional to put together a plan ahead of time on how we're going to pay it off. And especially when starting a business, we set out to be successful with our business, but the reality is that entrepreneurship is so challenging. I mean, so challenging. And there are going to be times where we make mistakes and we don't realize that, okay, I took out this debt and this idea that I had wasn't as successful as I was hoping it would be. But yet I feel like God maybe had, led me down this path anyway. We just need to trust in that moment that He has a plan for us, and then just work to intentionally pay it off after that. But we have to ask those questions before we take on the debt. Do we have a plan? What's our backup plan if the plan A doesn't work? What are we going to do so we don't, fall further down into a hole with our finances? And so, I mean, those are just my thoughts on debt specifically, is that it doesn't have to be bad. It can be helpful in whatever plan it is. But I think, again, like going back to like the B word, I know some people get really scared about putting together a budget, but budgets
The other big,
really,
the big, yeah, the big M and the big
the
B.
big
Yeah,
M and
exactly.
B, they're really scary topics. But budgeting doesn't really have to be scary. Like if you think about just like having a calendar, we budget out our time when we look at calendars and things like that. We don't want to overextend ourselves and run out of time where we can't get everything done in a day or go to all the things and events that we had planned to do. And so It is. It's super wise to budget out and think through our finances in a very practical way through having a budget to say, like, okay, this is how much I have coming in. This is how much I can afford. And so to avoid debt as much as possible, we need to have a budget to see what is it that I can afford. And if I can't afford this, is whatever I am pursuing important enough to God to take debt on? And so that was actually something that a mentor of mine actually a few months ago, really, when I sat down on a call with him and just said, I really don't want to have to take out debt. What should I do? And he actually encouraged me, there's definitely like a moment when that can be helpful. Like sometimes we want to be able to propel these things, these goals and dreams that God has given us. And sometimes he's saying, yes, this is important. But we need to be in relationship with God. And it's not something that is easily we can't easily figure it out without having that communication with him. And so practice early on just in small questions. And then when you get to this big question of like, should I take on a loan to pursue this thing? Then you will have that practice from like smaller little decisions that you've made with him along the way to hear him more clearly when it comes to taking on debt, because that's a big decision.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of, again, your balance of that, because I'm going to go ahead and just again put myself on the chopping block, because I've been the Ramseyite where I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
even see a credit card. And then I've been on the side where I am now, where it's like, okay, it's about time where I have built enough stuff where I kind of know what I'm doing. And I kind of know
Yeah.
if this went into this particular pot, it would return the investment, right? And I think there's a key word right there that I just said to myself. It kind of helped myself, the word investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that what you're saying is right there. The key is God being your main investor or the backing
Yeah.
of the investment, right? Because if God is backing your investment into Him and His kingdom and His practices and His things, well, then you're golden, because He's going to help you figure out the wisdom and the things you need to do it. But like you said before, if it's just us running off and
Mm-hmm.
trying ideas, I love that you said it's all about God. And I also wanted to know, because you mentioned a mentor, how important is community or mentorship or coaching in this? Because I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
that's the other part that happens, is that we get isolated, especially, again, I'm talking to my creative tribe. We are famous for saying we're not good with money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to happen. Like we just assume that, okay, well, since I'm not good with money and I'm a creative, I'm an artist. So there's just no way. I have no shot of being able to pay this stuff off or take care of my finances. So I want to know from you,
Mm.
seeing this happen over and over again, how important is it to have people around you that are helping keep you on the straight and narrow when it comes to the big budget or those other things that can
Yeah.
get us off kilter?
Accountability is huge. And I think in every area of life, I mean, with your families, with your job, everything. I mean, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to get on a better diet plan and things, accountability, having someone who has kind of gone through that path, who's kind of walked before you to kind of walk alongside you as you are learning, that is a big element. And really accountability can be the key to finding consistency and real, actually like a real transformation. Accountability can be that difference between actually doing something. So many of us, and this is actually, I mean, for me in my business specifically, having someone to hold me accountable has really been transformational, because we have so much information on the internet. You can
Exactly.
literally learn to do anything, right? You can go on YouTube and watch how to do something, if it's something physical with your hands, or if you're trying to learn how to build a business, you can like go and make business plans online. It's like we have so much information and resources and tools at our disposal, but yet, I mean, how many of us have fallen prey to this where it's like we know everything we need to do, but yet we still just never do it. It's like, I
Exactly.
know, like if I'm building an online business, I know I need to have the whole like online funnel thing with my emails, and I need to have like a freebie, lead magnet. And I know I need to do all these things, but yet I'm like, I've never done it. Like, I mean, I have at this point, but like at a certain point, I was like, I know I need to build all these things, but this is really challenging. And I question myself if I'm really taking the right steps in this journey. And so having someone like a business coach can be really helpful if you're building a business in just helping you, guide you to be like, maybe that's not the best way to do it. How about you try this? And so the same thing with like finances. That's why I love getting to coach people and mentor and counsel them, because they can come to me and be like, well, I'm thinking about doing this with my finances. What do you think? And I'm like, actually, maybe doing it this way might result in a better outcome. And I'm not here to like be like yes and no to every single thing that you're doing, but it's just to help give you a broader sense of like what could happen if you take a certain path versus another one. So yeah, accountability, that's a really great question. Is like, yeah, what place does it have in any journey? And I think having someone come alongside you and be your guide in whatever you're trying to accomplish is so important. Yeah, it's a great question.
Oh, thank you, and I'm so glad you answered it like that because again, it speaks to the power. I mean, again, since I'm in Ecclesiastes all day today, two, how if one fall, but if he's with another, right, that they can pick it, and a 3/4 cord is not
Yes.
easily broken. So it's so much of this that goes again to spiritual biblical principles that are not about simply making $1 million, nor about taking a vow of poverty. Again, I feel like we're
Mm.
walking this middle ground of contentment, of saying, whether I am rich or whether I am poor, what Paul says, I have learned. And I love the
Mm.
fact that he says, I have learned to be rich, because he's not saying,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I got that one down too. I know how to handle my finances when I have it, and I know when I have to handle it when I don't. I did want you to speak a little bit about, because again, I feel like this is where a lot of us live in terms of the actual application day to day. And you mentioned your family. You mentioned that you're a foster mom.
Hmm.
And I wonder, this came to mind even as we were talking. And I'm on I don't know, how old is your children?
So I have a almost 10-month-old little baby
Oh,
boy, and then
wow.
our foster daughter that we have right now. She actually today, as we are speaking and recording this podcast, it's her birthday and she's 5 years old.
Hey, happy birthday
I
to, oh my gosh.
know.
So thank you for
So
taking
fun.
moments out of this. Okay, so this is wonderful. And by the way, I have a personal kind of connection with this, as my wife
Yeah.
works in an office as office management for advocacy group for foster children here
I
in
love it.
Florida. So I don't get to experience it at all except to support her, but I hear
Hmm.
the stories. So God bless you for what you're doing for that
Oh,
young,
thanks.
for your daughter, right? His daughter.
Hmm.
Okay, for your daughter, for your for the young lady. Now I'm wondering, what do you want them to see
Mm,
in you as you man, because you're talking about the next generation now.
totally.
So yeah, so I'm sure it's kind of challenging. Like, you've got to walk these principles out as a mom. You've got to walk these principles out, seeing that you've decided to step into another young person's life, right, and provide this place and this refuge. And so I'm wondering, how do these financial principles impact you on a day to day basis, that it helps you do this other thing, right? These
Yeah.
things that are so much more important in the long term than just what your bank account says.
Yeah. So many of my clients that I work with are parents, and one of their big questions is like, yeah, how do I teach my kids to be generous, to just manage their money in light of the gospel? How do I also teach them while I'm kind of learning this? And what's so fascinating about finances is that all of us have a money story. And what I mean by that is we all have been taught something about money, whether our parents or guardians explicitly sat us down and taught us about money. I never growing up really had like a sit down and this is how to budget kind of meeting with my parents at all. But I learned so much about money just in what they did with it and how they talked about money and how they, spent it or gave it away. I picked up so many lessons just through what they were doing with it. And so we as parents need to be really aware of what we're teaching our children through our actions and interactions with money and how we speak about it. And yeah, just our mentality of about payday and all of these things towards our jobs. And so to teach our children really good principles about finances, yes, there's definitely a time and a place to sit down and have conversations and give them lessons. The grocery store is a great place to have those conversations, or even at church when the plate is being passed around. Those are really great ways that we can intentionally teach our kids about money through the way that we're acting with our dollars. So if we're giving some money away, we can teach our children like why we're doing this, what God says about generosity and its importance in our financial plan. I'd say if you are looking for even more tangible ways, especially if your children are older and really can ask questions and you can sit down and have these conversations, like invite them into some of your budget meetings and planning with your spouse, especially like and make it a family thing. Like make your financial goals like a whole group effort, work as a team to set your goals for maybe that month or the quarter or for the year and just say, this is what we're saving for. This is what we want to do. This is how much we want to give away and get them excited about participating in these conversations because the earlier you can start modeling it to them, the better. And the earlier you can have these conversations, the better. And just make it exciting and not as scary because I think so many of us think that, yeah, this M word, big bad M word is so scary, but it doesn't have to be. And especially if we start younger. It's so beautiful just how we can pass these things along to our children.
I love this, and we're definitely going to get you out of here so you can continue to enjoy the birthday party. But I do want to talk a little bit about your journey as a author and entrepreneur. We had a little bit of shop talk right before this started, and even I was laughing when you were talking about the funnels and all that kind of stuff. Again, this has a lot to do with both our financial story and the dream that God has put on the inside of us, right? So I'm just curious, are there any major, I don't want to say mistakes, but like, what are the biggest lessons you've learned, even as you pursue your own dream? Because you talked about it. Paying off the debt was a big thing and it happened.
Yeah.
Now you're an author. Now you're building a business. So for someone that, again, is chasing, I'm not saying you're chasing, but you are building.
Yep.
So what are those couple of lessons maybe you've learned along the way as you've built what you're building? Now that whether it's also with finance or even just the way God is speaking to you about how you build something that has, an eternal purpose in the long run.
It's a really good question. And I don't know that anyone's ever really asked me that. I'd say that one thing that I've struggled with as someone who's built something that other people can purchase, a service, a product,
Yeah.
anything like that. One of the hardest things to do, especially as like a Christian entrepreneur, is pricing our products and services. And so this kind of ties back into finances, especially as an entrepreneur. We make something and we hope that it's valuable enough that someone would pay for it, right? And I think it's really interesting that when we build these businesses, especially as Christians, we often talk about it as our ministry. And to a degree, they definitely are a ministry. We're ministering to other people through what we're creating and building and providing. However, what's really hard is that our fellow like brothers and sisters in Christ hear this word ministry and especially like if we're building something that's particularly faith-based, so for me, I'm a Christian financial counselor, and they hear these words and they have this mentality and they think that our services or products should be free because they're kind of like being done in the name of Jesus and we're trying to equip the body of Christ. And this is such a tough balance beam to like walk. We don't want to fall to one side where we're giving everything away for free, but we also do want to respect and love our brothers and sisters by not like charging them so much for these products and services that we are creating. So, how do we do that? Honestly, I don't have the perfect answer, but what I have realized, what I have learned is that in those moments where I feel like I'm doing a really big service to others, where I'm like pricing things really low. I'm making them super affordable. The people who buy in and like invest in these products and services never actually really take any action. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'm jumping in. She's charging like, only 20% of what she usually does. So like, yeah, I'm going to get it." And those are the people like that just never do anything with it. And it's so unfortunate because I'm like, "Hello, like this is the best price that I can offer you. Why don't you take action and do something about it?" However, on the flip side, what I've learned is that when I charge full price for the products and services that I have, and I'm not saying like charging like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? We're not like over blowing our prices, but when
Right.
we're charging like a good, honest price for the work that we have done, those are the people who invest in this and actually do something with it. They value it and they want to take action. And so in the end, it's interesting because pricing things at this like low kind of affordable price is actually kind of doing a disservice to our fellow believers because they're kind of investing in these things and then never doing anything. So in the end, it's kind of a waste for both of us. So it's one of those interesting weird lines that you have to walk. And it's just one of those lessons that I've learned that we have to price ourselves well.
Oh gosh, I could not have paid you, just to use the word, anymore to like that is exactly what I needed to hear. I'm literally sitting
Mm,
here having just written down my plan to raise as I'm recording. Of course, after this it's too late, but I've just written down my plan to raise my prices
yeah.
on my God and Gigs membership. God and Gigs
Yeah.
membership. And what you just said is so true. And the verses that are popping into my head again, this is where I go, is where the proverbs say people will curse the man who
Mm,
withholds the grain, but blessed is the man who sells it. And I think
exactly.
hoarding, in a sense, is honestly when we say, "Oh well, we don't want to give it, we don't want anybody to have it, so we're just going to keep it really low price, and we're just just kind of meet it out. We don't want anybody to think too much of us." But like you said, the people who actually understand the blessing of, because they are sowing a seed. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing I can't remember where I heard that. It might have been you saying this on your recent interview. But when you actually give people the opportunity to sow big into
Mm-hmm.
themselves, you're telling them, "I believe in you. I believe you can afford this. I believe you are the head and not the tail. I believe you are above and not beneath." All these
Mm-hmm.
little platitudes we like to give when we say, "Hey, I'm calling you higher, not because I want your money," but Paul even says that I want this to add to your account.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give you the opportunity to have a blessing. And again, this is where, like you said, it gets tricky because it can sound manipulative.
I
It
know.
can sound very much like I'm the one that gets the money. So, of course, God's going to bless you. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not the heart of it. And like, I think that goes back to, again, and forgive me because I'm riffing, but when we say man looks at outward appearance, but God looks at the heart, God looks at the
Yeah.
heart of the entrepreneur. God knows, I'm speaking to myself right now. He knows when you're out to get somebody and try to rake them over the coals and get all the money and he
Yeah.
knows when you're literally saying what you're saying, which is, "I don't want to cheapen this thing that you're about to enter in," especially like you said in finances. One thing I could say, and maybe you can tell me whether you agree with this, because I'm trying to tell myself this even as I'm working on my own prices. I've told myself that if I'm going to give you something that is free of charge, that's because I know like it's freely given, freely I receive, right? Freely I receive, freely live. But if I'm giving you something that cost me,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to cost you
Yeah.
because it's the same principle. Like, much is given, much is required. So have you seen that in your own life, that like when you put your investment into something,
Yeah.
like you've invested in your education, and then you show people like what's available to them, debt freedom, like have you
Mm-hmm.
seen that even exchange where they are then willing to, because we're talking dollars and cents now.
Yeah.
If they invest into you, they could get a huge return on different types of things.
Definitely. It's all about the value of anything. And I mean, I hate to kind of admit it, but at times when I price things very low, I tend to have a different mentality as far as like the value of it. And so I don't put as much of myself into something when I know, okay, someone's not going to be paying a lot of money for this. But when I know that a student or a client of mine is going to pay they're going to invest a lot of money in what I'm doing. I want to give them as much value as I can pack in there. And so it's like a balance of exchange here where we both value one another. When someone invests in a coaching program, whether it's for their finances or their business or they're trying to grow in any other endeavor, we want to value ourselves to say, I'm worth it to invest in a program like this to learn how to better do X, Y, and Z. And so it's a whole exchange of value going back and forth, and everybody has to kind of be in agreement. I have people kind of sign a commitment document, basically just saying like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do the hard work, because if I continue to pour into them and then they just kind of hope that something happens magically, I'm like, well, no, like you have to do something too. I can't just like pick you up and do things for you with your finances. You have to show up and do the work too. So it's all about value. Like, do we value one another? Do I value myself? And am I going to actually do what this guide, this accountability person, this coach, this mentor is going to tell me to do? So yeah, it's a tricky line to follow and to walk. And I would say that, yeah, if somebody says, like, if someone sees prices on something and they're like, wow, that's too high, um, they might not value you. They might not value themselves. And I kind of hate saying that, but it's like, you have to ask those questions. Is this important enough to invest in to hopefully get those outcomes? So yeah, it's
Oh
hard.
no, yeah, but I'm so glad we're digging into it, and I feel so much more comfortable sharing it with you because you are on that side of knowing the ins and outs, knowing the
Mm,
financial principles of actually having to walk this out, so that you're. And again, we're not saying to anyone that somehow that Christian creatives, Christian entrepreneurs are out to get you. We're actually saying
yeah.
that we're out to bless the kingdom of God. And the Bible talks about so much about, I'm sure you know that more better than anybody, how much the Bible talks about money.
A
And the
lot.
reason is because we serve an abundant God, and he has no need of us to pad his pockets. He
Yep.
he owns all the pockets. So
I
there's no
love that.
need.
He owns all the pockets. I've never heard anyone say anything like that. I
so,
love
so,
that.
yeah, so I don't know. It's like I said, this is where my brain just goes off the rails. But I that's what I feel like as create people who are created to build and add value to the world, and yet participate in and never feel like we are, again, like we have to hoard and grab and be
Yeah,
greedy and all those things that we know leads us to destruction. So I
definitely.
love this conversation. We could go on forever, but I do have one kind of closing question for you. And it kind of goes back to what you just said, because I thought about it earlier
Mm,
when you first talked about being a disciple. And a disciple of Christ is disciplined. And I've
mm,
had this thought lately, Katie. Again, I'm bouncing ideas off of you, but I don't think you can be a disciple and not be disciplined.
mm-hmm. True.
I don't think so. I think
I
the
agree.
very term disciple means before you decide to be a disciple of, you have to be disciplined, period. And
Yeah.
then you get to be a disciple of the thing. So, what does it mean to you now that you've done all that you've done? What is next? What is God leading you to? How is He, like, if there is a next that you're already thinking of, like, where would you like to see your ministry, business, right, all
Hmm.
together? Where do you think He's leading you as you follow Him, as you help, to continue to help other disciples to really learn what to do with their finances?
Yeah. I've never actually like publicly said this yet, so this will be the
Oh
like
wow, we get an
ooh,
exclusive. I love
little
it. Okay,
exciting
don't worry.
exclusive
We'll,
here.
we'll, we'll, we'll bleep out anything that's.
Yes, actually, the two of us may have talked about it off air, but I don't even think when we were talking about it then that I had it fully formed or like a full vision really of what God was trying to lead me down. But um, I, alongside of my finances, I've been on this journey of like learning more about like health and wellness in general. And I've just been learning so much and been connecting with so many families and especially moms who really want to go on kind of a journey together of learning how to be good stewards of the bodies that God has given us
Hmm.
to strengthen ourselves, to equip ourselves really well to handle illnesses and stuff. And one of the elements of this journey has been to kind of start switching over to the more like non-toxic, organic foods, things like that. And in this process, I've learned like, wow, this stuff can be kind of expensive. And here I am trying to also be a good steward of my finances. So how do I kind of pair these two things together? Because this is something I really value, right? I want to invest in taking care of myself in this way to glorify God, but I also don't want to like throw all my money away at this and want to do it well. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I've been kind of coming up with some ways to help moms specifically to be able to afford this lifestyle that um, can be somewhat more expensive. And like, how do we just steward all of these things well? How can we view it from a more holistic standpoint of our finances and our health? And so coming up with kind of a new cohort style going through my course. So I do have a course called Redeeming Your Finances, which is built for Christians of any kind to go through and be equipped with these excellent money management skills, but now kind of targeting in, and I have a heart for mamas who just want to do this and provide well for their families, both financially and from a health perspective. So stay tuned for that. I'm building something out. And so the best way to keep updated on what's going on with that is to, join me over at Redeeming Your Finances. You can sign up for my email list and I'll be putting out information there, or joining my Facebook group, or finding me on YouTube. And you'll eventually hear a little bit more about that, but it's coming soon. So I'm excited for
I
what God's going
love
to
it.
do with
Oh
it.
no, yes, because see, I love the exclusive. I love the multi hyphenate, right? The connection that you just showed.
Yeah.
That again, that your money, and you just mentioned. I love that you're so transparent about the fact that you're even deciding how to invest in this next project, right? Because
Mhm.
again, God might be opening new doors, but then to open the new doors, He has to open new resources to you, and
Exactly.
it will take you in another direction where you might not need, right, this particular stream of income, because now it's going to come from over here and God's opening up doors in new ways. So I love that you are walking the talk. That's really what I mean by that. Like, you are
Thanks,
walking the
Alan.
talk when it comes to this. I'm so grateful that you are doing this work. I mean, there couldn't be no better phrase than redeeming your finances, because we're here trying to help creators become the creators that God created them to be. You're helping them use their money the way that God created them to
Mhm.
use it. So I
Mhm.
love this so much. They will absolutely have to click all the links in the show notes to stay connected with you. Thank you for
Yeah.
giving me all the links. We'll make sure those are posted. But please promise me, just give me this promise that you will come back, whether it's a workshop, whether it's something else with the mamas, whatever it is, that you'll come back and share with our God and Gigs tribe, because you are truly,
Yeah.
truly, truly a blessing to the body of Christ.
Oh, I can make that promise very easily. I would love to, and I'd love to continue the conversation in whatever way is most beneficial. So definitely let me know. I'd love to.
All right, we'll make it happen. Well, until that time, God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of the God and Gig Show.
Thanks, Alan.
My friend, thank you for watching this episode. If that blessed you, you got to make sure that you stay connected with this community and this channel so that you can get more where that came from. We're sharing great interviews, tactics, strategies, mindsets, lifestyle choices, everything is going to help you become a totally confident creative. And don't miss an episode of the God and Gig Show. If you are staying connected to our channel, you'll be able to find us anytime we release new episodes. And you can check out some of our archives of almost 200 episodes now that we've shared over the last few years. Make sure you check out one of the suggestions right now, because it's probably perfect for you to continue to develop as a creative. And continue to stay connected with us, because we're here to help you become the creative that God created you to be. We'll see you in the next episode.